Here is how decision tables in which scenarios will it actually check whether the decision table is going to evaluate all the rows or just only those particular rows. So that is dependent on checkbox here on the results tab of decision table. So say for example if this is unchecked, then it will check this condition. It says, say for example here the way it would look like is if age is greater than 22, okay, and less than 30, that is between 22 and 30, and weight is between 60 and 75, this is a range, and it is smoker, and then health condition is good, and the result is returned true. Otherwise it will go and check here. So first, if this condition, if it reaches up to this action is equal to true, like which is all these conditions are evaluated to true, and then it gives us result and it exits it. So it does not execute any of these steps after that. Whereas if you checkbox evaluate all rows, it will do this one, it will do this one, like basically it will run through all the conditions in the decision table and then finally return a result. Right? So that is an important concept that you have to keep in mind about the decision table. I hope that answers your query, and like both the things that you asked for answers your query. This is a sample decision table. Hold on, let me just email this to you guys. But does it answer your query, Paul? Okay. Yeah, okay. Alright, so we'll send it to all of you. Sample decision table and when it is used for this use and evaluate all. Alright, so what we can do now is, alright, okay, so our next work is now to get started with the remaining topics. Let me just show my screen. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about delegating rules, automating decisions, talk about validations. And then we're going to just get started with reports also today. It's going to be a slightly longer session because we want to cover some of the topics. And thanks, Ed. So what we can do is now we can see how we're going to delegate. This I think is even covered in the support app application. So if you guys take a look at the support request application that was there was an option for delegating. So hold on. So if you see here this option here, I think it's tab 18. It shows you the business use case for delegating a decision table, and you see here you click on. So you click on this decision table. Here is a decision table, and then here you have the delegate option. You click on it, then it becomes visible here under this configuration tab. Yeah, this is how it will look on the particular system. So let's take a look at how the delegation looks like. Give me a we can just do the exercise around that. Give me a second. So the exercise would be similar to that, just that we'll try to make it a bit different. Okay, now what's again further important, more important in that scenario is that in the decision table, when you're delegating it, what is important to understand is there is a type of rule called a system-user-my rules. That is, system creates an instance of that particular class in the backend, an instance of that particular class when you're delegating it. This is pretty important to understand because then we will know what exactly is happening in the backend. Okay, so what kind of validation or what kind of logic is being run in the backend when we are doing the delegation. So delegation essentially ensures that we get the actual data, the actual decision table which a developer develops, and that should be visible to the end business user to make changes at runtime and production. Okay, so normally there is an option called as production rule sets in real-time systems. So in the access group of managers, they will have an option called as they will have the option to access a particular type of rule set. Okay, so those rule sets are called as production rule sets, which means that these rules can generally, once a developer develops something and he checks in the code, before moving to production, the rule sets are locked. But if the rule sets are locked, then if you delegate a rule to a manager, but he cannot change it in production because the rule set is locked. So in order to prevent that problem, where the rule set is locked, he cannot make changes, generally what happens is all these things with regard to rule set locking and all that, like, so in order to circumvent those problems, we generally put all the delegated rules to into a production rule set. Okay, so I will show you the theory around that. Give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Right, let me show you the theory around this one now, delegating rules. Hold on, I'm just logging into my Pega application. In fact, bringing up the application. Yeah, so if you come to the records here, say for example, we go to the decision tab, decision table here. Now, what's interesting to take a look at is let's try to incorporate the decision logic as well into our application as well later as part of an exercise, but I think this is already covered in the support app, so I'm not going to do the same exercise again here. But for those of you who have not done this exercise properly, so I'm just going to probably just log in and show you this option here. And so we have something like the set status good, just like a good one to know. So what we can do is we can save as this. It's a pretty simple one. It just checks the response code, and if the response code is 200, then that says that there is no problem. Data has been connected HTTP status. I'm going to save as this into my integration rules at the organization level. Right, now if you take a look at this here, you can save this. So currently I saved it as an organization level integration rule set. Now instead of this, what I can do is I can go to the operator access group. Okay, under this advanced tab, I have something here called as a production rule set. What this production rule set will do is it will hold the access group, the rule set, which can be modified in production. Right? So which will remain unlocked, and so let's say AIG, we'll name it AIGI prod. Okay, 1. And then I will say create and open and save here. Now what I will do is probably save as this into the production rule set. I think I need to log out and log in once just to make this visible in the so it doesn't come up here. You see, but you see you have to select production rule sets. It comes up. Let's say create and open. See, there's a warning. Well, let's see what's a warning that comes up. It's not defined the application, configuration is deprecated. Alright, so we just need to update it in the application rule form as well. Here under this, inside this application rule form, whenever you add a production rule set, this also explains to you what a production rule set is. So if you expand this to advanced, here you have, so here there's also production rule set. So you need to give this here as well. So just know that production rule set is a feature, okay, which allows you, which ensures that you can get your application to the managers and people like that to have the capability to modify rules at runtime and production. So content is default policy, content security policy. So let's come here. So I will say default. I'm just going to just to get rid of the warnings. Reset and report. This is just to get rid of the warnings. Generally, whenever you build the application, we should make sure that there are like literally very at least no warnings or things like that. So because that's the way you're expected to build the application at an enterprise level. So let's see here. Save this. Open the access group. Let me just log off and log in again. Let's see what are the latest updates. So this is as part of trying to make sure that we have an access group. We have the production rule set, the application. Okay, let's come here. Non-stamp, you see here it's alright. So this. I think it expects us to add it here. So generally the understanding is that the production rules it should be at the top of the stack. Okay, so let's try to save this again. Just want to get rid of this warning. It's not a good thing. I don't like warnings. So yeah, maybe we just need to ensure that we go through this article once more and then get rid of the warning. For now, let's ignore it. Okay, looks probably to be a bug to me. It should have updated it. Generally, the understanding is that you set it here and it should be good actually. So I haven't set it here, even then it doesn't pick up. Alright, let's move forward. So to know that you ought to have a production rule set in your application and the access group, which again needs to be even updated on the application rule form as well, that you have a production rule set. Now, coming to this decision table here, say this one here. Yeah, so say, yeah, now let's do one thing. Let's go to this 𝐴𝐼 prompt, and generally we will try not to have a check and checkout option, or even if you have a check and checkout option, no, but actually here we trend to have more of a check and checkout option because we want to know which manager or who's the person who must have modified that particular role at that particular point of time. So let's try to delegate this role. Let's check in our let's say actions. Then I say delegate, and then I say to the access group. As of now, I'll give it to all the managers, and I will say step HTTP status. And decision table to check HTTP status from integration layer, right? So now what happens is if I click delegate, it creates an instance of system-user-my-rules. So it's an important concept that you have to understand in real-time systems. Take this one. So it has created an entry here, and this is the entry. It shows here the actual instance logic, maybe the instance handle, the key, and then it gives the anchor text as well. So this is what was just right now. It just got created like about 2 minutes back. So because we clicked on delegate, so it creates instances of system-user-my-rules. Now if you refresh it here, I think shouldn't be visible for this person. Let's log in as a manager and then let's check if we have access to it. Now what's furthermore important is if not as a manager, then what we can do is we can just check in this one. Check step status. Alright, so if you now see here, here's this option called as configuration, which will show you the delegated rule. This is the same as exercise that we saw there, but this is all that there is to it, right? Now you have the option to change it. Then say, for example, I will say this also should, otherwise also I should give true. Okay, you can save, but it says you're not authorized to modify, create, modify lock instance. We need to check the privileges, but primarily what you have to understand here is you have the ability to modify these. So that is again, that is the important concept that you have to keep in mind when you're trying to change or access the rules in the delegated mode. Okay, so what's more important as developers is to understand that it creates instance of system-user-my rules whenever you delegate a rule. Okay, now going forward, the next thing that I want to teach you guys today is part of declarative rules. There are more types of declarative rules. I'm just going to cover those as well. So this first one is called as a declare index. I think we spoke about this some time back. So what happens is, see, the work object database table that we have, every record corresponds to one work object. Okay, so if I expose a top level property or a page property, then a separate database column is created. Okay, so say for example, I go to my class here. Okay, now if I go to the 𝐬𝐯𝐭𝐞 or any of the classes, then I have this option called as optimized for reporting. So when I do this, I'm essentially telling the system to create an additional column, and that additional column would remain in the same database table that is there here. Say for example, I click definition here. Say here, we go to this test connection here, and this is the table that the system is currently having here. Okay, so it says PC AIG claim on Dropbox. So if you optimize or you expose a column here, then what happens is, I hope you are all aware that optimizing or exposing the column is equivalent to creating a separate database column in that particular table. Now what happens in the long run is that if you create an additional column, then that additional column is going to actually add or just add an additional database column in that particular this table that it is mapped to. Okay, but that is for a straightforward case, that is the normal optimization. But if it is a page list, then each work object will have multiple page list entries. So it does not make sense to create a separate column in the same table. Rather, we will create another table altogether and map it from our table to that table. So in this way, we can have one-to-many mapping there. Okay, so I hope that's a key concept that is to be understood. In case of page list, every object will have multiple values. Okay, so it doesn't make sense to create a separate column in that same table, because every row will have multiple rows, multiple entries. So we created as a separate database table, and the declare index will automatically map it for us. So if you see here, say this is a page list, and say for example this property here, I say optimize for reporting here, then what happens is, see, let's say this is a rule set name, and if you carefully observe here, it creates something called as a new index class and index property, and for this disease list dot cost of treatment, and because the automatic mapping, so then what happens is, if you create a separate column for that, okay, so say for example this is our table, alright, this is our table, AIG claim L003, okay, this is a life insurance claim. Now generally you will have something called as the name of disease here, which is a top level property. Then if you want to map this to an index table, then this declared index will map all the entries that we have on this particular column in the system, in our table, to the index rule here. So this declare index rule's job is to copy all the information from one table to the other table, or give the link always, right? So it is supposed to be it is supposed to ensure that the link is always there, irrespective of how the developer does it. Okay, so always it should be there. That link from our main table to the other table should always be there as part of the declare index. So it actually maps the properties and all that. So in effect, we can say that it does it declaratively. So when I say it does it declaratively, it means that you're going to map all the properties, and that every time the work object is saved or created, the declare index will ensure to copy all the values that are there in that for the particular entry into the other table. Okay, so this is what I was just clicking on to do, this one here. And if you optimize for reporting, you will get this option, see index class, and this is a primary key and foreign key. Now this does it automatically, so that is important for us. This is our work class, work table, and this is the index class, right? Now I hope that's fairly clear. So we just have to create a separate entry and just map it. So that's all done by the system, but you have to know that it's done via declare index. Now there is another one called as declare on change. What the declare on change rule does is it automatically will always trigger forward chaining, which is again important. Say for example, when a property value changes, it automatically has the capability to calculate something. So in yesterday's session we saw how we had the declare expression. So similarly, we can have something called as declare on change. So we have the option to suspend the work object processing in the declare expression or the declare on change rule. Say for example, let's open that one here. So if you see here, it basically the on change property is going to work on a particular class. So you say, okay, I want to watch all these properties, and when some condition is equal to true, I'll say, okay, call this activity, or I can say I have the option to suspend the work object processing there. So that's something that's important to understand. Just know it for the theory part, but not keep in mind that this is a really resource intensive option, because we have the option 2. We have this thing for on change of all these properties. Okay, so we have or even if it is for a single property, the reason why it's resource intensive is it from the start of the case all the way till the end of the case, this is always going to keep watching this particular properties. So that way it's going to be resource intensive because it always keeps a watch on that. So whenever you save a work object or you change anything on a work object, it's going to go and check whether this property value changed. Okay. So what you have to know is you can have when condition check, and then you can either call an activity or you can call suspend the work object. Now the other final option you have is called as a declare trigger. What this does is this is a pretty solid concept in the sense that whenever a work object gets saved or it has a committed save or something like that, then we can ensure to run a particular activity, again like a when condition, but this is irrespective of any property change. Like we can even make it a property change, but take a look at this one here. It says that declare trigger when status changed. So what happens is whenever the work object status changes, say for example it was new initially and then moves to something like pending fulfillment. Okay. Whenever such a scenario happens, then what actually happens in the backend is the system has the ability to, whenever the work object gets saved, okay, and it checks that one of this property value has changed, that this POS status work, then we will trigger a calculation of, we will go and do some calculation. So what the calculation will do is it will check how much time it took since the last update. So essentially we would say that the time it took to move from this status to this status is the difference in the time. So we'll just push that to the database for like basically some reporting purpose and all that. But what's important is to understand here is a declarative option which has the option for saved and one of this property value was modified and things like that. So yeah, so let's declare on change and declare trigger example. So make sure, I don't think there's any exercise video for this, but keep in mind that these are also other declarative rules that are there in the system. Okay, I want you guys to just a little bit dabble around all this in your free time, but it's important to understand the theoretical concepts about this. Alright, so I think the next thing here is for you to understand about validations. So in Pega, we have like about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically primarily 5 types of validations. Again, one of those validations is also declarative rules. It's called the declare constraints rule. Generally, it's used to check, it runs declaratively, which means that you don't need to explicitly state or invoke this validation rule anywhere. That you write this declarative rules once, and then whenever the work object gets saved or at any point of time, that particular property will always be watched, and it will just check if the value is right or that it has some check there. Okay, so we can actually have a declare constraint in our scenario. Say in our the cost of treatment, or we can ensure that just hold on. Let's write declare constraint. So I think again constraint is also shown to you guys on this exercise. It covered all this on CSA actually, which is actually pretty ahead of its time. We don't even need to, yeah, we see here this one. So we'll just go through this exercise. Shows image. So what this exercise, this option that we have here is the customer detail. They check if the customer has a particular skill. So what the validation here is that the customer should always, the skill that we enter for that particular customer should always between a range of 0 to 10 alone. Okay, so it should not be more than 100. So that is the check that we have here. Okay, the skill level should be between 0 and 100 or 0 and 10. Right. Now that is the option here for declarative constraints. Now the other validations that we have, so let's build that into our application. So make sure you guys do this without fail on any systems. So we can have some simple validations like say here. Okay, we will. So in the rule obj property, say for example, if I want the first name, okay, I can have a validation here on the first name, okay, and the validation should be pretty straightforward for us in the sense that we do not want to enter in this name here. We want, like, so see how like the first name and last name or something like that here. We want to ensure that the system accepts only non-numeric characters. So see, for example, here I can enter any value. I can enter a date of birth in the future. So these like simple validations I need to ensure. So for that, what I will do is I will open the property. Now, if I go to the data layer here, we will put the validations here on the data layer. So let's open our claimant info property. So we try to look at the property rules. So on the validation on the particular property rule form, if you make sure that, say for example here, the date of birth, because we automatically make this as a date time property type, system is never going to allow you to enter something like a text or something like here. So it would automatically give you the error. So let's see how that happens. Say for example here, user interface section, enter personal information. So that's obviously like that's an option which based on that happens automatically as well, based on the date of birth and like based on the property type, system gives an warning or an error or something else. So if you go to this presentation tab here, it says I think I say allow text entry. Okay, for the sake of it, I would say allow text entry. Then what happens is come here and I refresh this one here. Suppose I enter something like, okay. So you see here, it automatically gives it that it's not a valid date type. So that is because of the option that we have in this particular first type of validation, which is basically it will just check what is the property type and whether it is intact. Okay, whether that check is there. The other option is on the control rule form. We can ensure that we can have a validation like say for example so here it even allows me to enter a future date. So for that again we can put a validation here that it should not be a future date. But for the next thing that we will take a look at right now is we'll take the control rules. And if you look at the control rule here, say for example the option here is this is the control rule. You can give a px date time, or here on the property rule form also we can give a static list of values, not the date of birth but for something else. That is important for you to understand. Now say for example if you open the first name, and currently it is text, okay, so it's going to allow numeric and alpha values, but we want to accept only alpha values. So for which we will take an edit input and say that allow I would say non-numeric edit and put edit user validate. So I will say I think it was there for say numeric let's see what are the edit validate rules that are available. So it says I think there is a thing for a not a future date. So that is something that we can do. Even remember we had done for social security number. So if you open the social security number here, we already have a validation called as SSN. So which ensures that okay, we can make this mandatory, and we always have to have a value for this. Say I make it required as always, then I say submit, and here as well I will make this so this is required. Right, so our intention here is to ensure that we don't have so I would say the label alignment of all this is also in the right. Okay, so I say here absolute format text alignment is to the left, not a problem. Let's see here the label alignment is standard, reserve space, alright. Okay, so we have these conditions here. Now what's key to understand is if you open this first name here, the option that we have is we can have a validate rule which checks if that particular property value is it's only text, or it should not be alpha. So generally you can find a validate rule for this one, an edit validate rule. So it's actually a Java routine function which is written by the system. Say okay, this here is letter, okay, that it is not a letter or digit letter or is a positive number or something like that. So we can just say is letter, and then for the date of birth as well, on the advanced tab you can put the edit validate rule here. It checks is not, is, I would say not future date. Okay. Now what happens here is, just refresh this one. Right. See, I put something with this. I think it didn't. Say is letter. Let us open this case again. So we've added some additional edit validate rules, and we also added a required checks. So say for example here I select this past, okay, so it says enter a valid past date. See here it always checks that. Now it's alright. Similarly for social security number also, if I click next, it says values cannot be blank. So then I will say that I will say, for example, I enter 1, 2, 3, and 3, 4, 5, and then I say here also is 2, 3. Okay. Now it says that it should be in a format. So I will say 1, 2, 3, hyphen 4, 4, hyphen 5, 6, 7, 8. Right. But somehow it's imperfect. So it says invalid value doesn't adhere to the validate is letter. So you have to have, say, like this. And then, but for last name, I did not put that check. So we can put it on the last name as well. So here is last name. I'm going to say the edit validate rule called as isLetter. Now, what's interesting is you can have this validation from the control rule form also. That is the other thing that we want to learn. So what we did now is on the property rule form we saw that if the property is some particular type, it gives an error. Okay. Then we saw what is a validate rule. Right. Then we even saw what was constraint in the support app. Now on the control rule forms also we can give a validation. Let me show you how. Say for example I said this is email. Okay. And I give it here, data type was email or all good. But now let me go to this section here and we could add an additional text input. And here we're going to have the option called as .email. .customer.email. Right? Now carefully observe here, we're going to change the control here to purpose specific. We will give it as email here. Okay. Now, okay, we'll make it required. So always. Then you save this here. Now if you come here, I'm not going to give any other validations for this one. So refresh this. Now if you see here, say for example, select some past. To select a past value, let's say. Right. Now say for example I enter again this and what allow me to go forward actually should have actually given us an error there. So you see here, yeah, you see here it became red and that is indicative of an error. So if you say here please enter an email address, it gives you an error like this, but it doesn't essentially stop you from going forward, but the particular field becomes red color and it gives a warning there. That's all, right? But say if I say a@b.com, then I tab out, then it's all fine. But say for example I don't give .com, then I tab out, or I don't give @ okay. But you see here it gives saying that please enter an email address, right? So this is an option that is available on the control rule form, but apparently it allows you to go forward. Now the other validation that is available here is called as a normal validate rule, which is again completed on our exercise standard support exercise app. So it just checks the same validate rule. Wait, I think this is available here. I'll show you that. I think for date of birth, I say birth, and then check all sheets. Let me show it to you here. Yeah, this one here, 21. Yeah, so this is the one here. So we have we can create the same thing we can achieve using a validate rule. So you see you're not a future date, and you can check the date of birth is not a future date by checking here if the date time is in the past or in the future, and we give a future date message. Okay, now that is also a key concept that you can think of to implement, but the reason why you would go for an edit validate over a validate rule is because the edit validate always runs irrespective of the scenario, because we have defined this at the property level. So in whichever place you use this, it's going to give the same behavior. Okay. But if you use a validate rule, that is referenced only in the flow action, which means that only at that point we use it. Okay. Right. So that is something key concepts about validate rules. I hope you guys understood that. Yeah. The next thing that we're going to apparently cover is on these automating decisions. So we can probably cover this in tomorrow's session. We can go for automating decisions and reports in tomorrow's session. Right? So we're going to talk about when rules. Yeah, basically the same screenshot that I sent you now is already there in the system. We have some good decision tables and things like that. So you need to know how to configure a decision table, a tree, and after which we're going to take a look at reporting. But yeah. All right, so that's all from my end for today. Let me know if there are any doubts. But that's all for the day. Alright, so I see there are no doubts, so I will log off for now. Let me know if there is anything that you want just me to recover so that it's more clear for you guys. Yeah, but that no further questions here. I mean, I hope there are no further questions, but if not, we're done. Alright, okay then people, good day. Let's meet tomorrow at the same time.
Thank you.
Alright, yeah, thank you everyone.